Hi friends, it's Heidi M with my actual TIFF 22 update, or recap, I should say, of the various films that I was able to watch at this year's TIFF 2022 Toronto International Film Festival. It was 10 days for me. Technically runs for about 11 days, with Thursday night being the first night. I was able to take time off from my day job to enjoy the festival in person this year. I had missed the hustle and bustle of TIFF brings to the city, but also Festival Street on King Street West. For those of you who are familiar with the city of Toronto, it closes down for the first weekend. It was nice to see a lot of people walking around, partaking in some of the free stuff and just enjoying what the city has to offer in terms of arts with regards to the film festival. And also, we had really good weather this September, so it was kind of nice to be able to enjoy some of the sun in between film screenings this year. So let me just quickly dive into my tally of films at this year's TIFF. So basically, I managed to watch 27 films at TIFF this year. I think that's a record for me in the sense that I haven't been to the festival, obviously, because of the pandemic. But even in the before times, I think I did less in 2019, maybe because I was also working. But yeah, 27 for my first year back in person, not too bad. I did go to the festival in person in 2021, but I'm kind of not counting that as my first year in person because I was only able to go for a few days and I didn't really get to watch a lot of films. I watched a lot more from the comfort of my own home. So I wanted to share some of my personal favorites, as my film gal pal Donna G from The More the Merrier likes to call it, our personal favorites that sort of stay with us for various reasons and tug at our heartstrings sometimes, or they're just fun to watch, or cinematically they're films that I think are doing amazing work on screen. From the production side of things, I always look at not just what the story is about, but the music, the cinematography, costume design, setting. There's so much that goes into putting films together from a lot of these companies and teams that I think that's sort of what stays with me sometimes. It may be that the story is not new per se, but I like the way that it translates on screen, especially a big screen. I am somebody who will still go to the cinema when I can. So I wanted to share with you my top 10. I will list them, but in not an order where it's 1 to 10. I'm just going to list them all out for you so that you kind of get an idea of the variety of films that I was able to catch at this year's festival. In no particular order, my top 10 or personal favorite films at this year's TIFF include Broker, Charcoal, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, All Quiet on the Western Front, Decision to Leave, The Banshees of Inisherin, Musha, The Voice of Bossa Nova, Domingo and the Mist, El Agua, or The Water, and Toronto's own This Place. So I will be giving more details on who is behind these film in terms of directors on my website, hyemusings.ca. So make sure you go to that link to hear, or rather read about who's behind these films. But in terms of some of the films that are listed here, I want to share why I like them. They basically talk about different themes. Some of them are historical, like All Quiet on the Western Front, but it's really a different take on this very familiar World War I story. I also quite enjoy the music in this film, and I did speak with the composer, who is very grateful in terms of sharing a lot of information on his work for this film. The composer's name is Orkel Bertelmann, and he was very, as I said, gracious in sharing his process for the compositions for this film. I also enjoyed Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook from Korea. He is very versatile filmmaker. His films are well known for those of us who like genre, and also action and suspense. And one of his most famous ones is Old Boy, which has also been remade in English. I recommend the original always. But Decision to Leave is a bit of a different take for him, and for some it may not be their favorite film. However, I like the layers in the story. As a friend of mine put it recently, it's kind of like a film noir where there's sort of like a femme fatale kind of vibe going on, and with the female lead, and then the cop that sort of falls, or maybe doesn't fall in her trap, but more like develops these feelings, and there's like an interesting relationship between the two leads. I think Decision to Live is currently on screen throughout the US and Canada, so I do recommend it for those of you who like the film noir vibes and fans of Park Chan-wook. Do not expect a lot of major violence, but there are twists in the story, so pay attention. It's a little bit longer. I think it's about 2 hours long, but I definitely recommend it. Another film that has stayed with me for different reasons is the documentary Miúcha, The Voice of Bossa Nova. And it really is a personal look at the artist Miúcha from Brazil, and her from her family's point of view. I think it's her nephew who is one of the directors. I also spoke with the two directors of this film, and I will make sure I link that to this piece so that you hear more about that process. Beautiful film in terms of mixing some animations with some interviews. Miúcha herself did a lot of writing in terms of her diaries, so there's a lot of personal pieces of stories or history or her story in Miúcha, The Voice of Bossa Nova, and of course the music is amazing. I also want to talk about this place. It is a Toronto-based film. There's such a treat to see our city being represented at TIFF, not just because it's TIFF, but also the different points of view that these younger filmmakers are bringing in terms of queer stories, where people are just people and we're not just focused on whether they are queer or not. It's a beautiful story of two young women who fall in love in the setting of the big city, and director V.T. Nayani did an excellent job as her first time feature. She's done some short films. So I just wanted to say there's so much to love about this film. There's the music, there's the acting, there's the story, and of course the setting. So that's This Place. Look out for hopefully a release sometime soon, I hope. I also wanted to talk a little bit about how to blow up a pipeline. This is sort of like a thriller in terms of eco-activism, and it's following a group of young activists. It's really, really well done. Basically, from the minute the film starts to it ends, it's a roller coaster of a ride, bringing some very important themes to light, in how, the young people of today will be affected by what's happening in terms of climate crisis. So How to Blow Up a Pipeline is definitely one I recommend also. A shout out to my Irish friends and family. The Banshees of Inisherin is another film that I really enjoyed for various reasons. The casting, of course, of Colin Firth and Brandon Gleeson. And it's about this, it's a bromance, I guess, but it's also about what happens in these friendships among men, and it deals with some themes that are not always talked about. It really is a beautiful film on screen. It has dark humor. It has a lot going for it, and I think it's one of my favorites because it deals with a lot of different things with an interesting sense of humor. So that is The Banshees of Inisherin, and I think that's also on screen near you, probably in North America. My most favorite film at this year's TIFF was A Broker, and this film is about chosen family. So Broker is directors Hirokazu Kuroeda from Japan's first film in South Korea with a stellar cast of actors. Shout out to the little kid who steals the scene in any time he's on screen, and the baby, of course. The film, as I mentioned, is about chosen family, but it really is about finding this chosen family when we least expect it, but when we most need it. If you're a fan of Corriera's other films, this one will not disappoint. He has such a knack for catching these sort of relationships in people that are so relatable. So that is Broker, and it's my most favorite film at TIFF. But of course, that is the one that stayed with me for a long time, and I'm still thinking about it and talking about it. So look out for that release, hopefully soon. For those of us in North America, I will definitely see it again. There are other films that I want to give a shout out to for different reasons, and maybe they're not in my top 10, but definitely films that I thought were really interesting, not just because of the topics, but also the way they look on screen, and also where they come from, and the various sort of ways that they make me think about things in general. So I want to give a shout out to Muru. It's a film from New Zealand, and it does talk about the use of police force on Maori territories, and those are themes that are relatable not just to First Nations in New Zealand, but definitely across the world, relatable to Canada, Central and South America, you name it. So that is Muro from New Zealand. There is also the documentary My Imaginary Country by Patricio Guzman from Chile. He is a filmmaker whose documentary I really, really like because they're very observational, thoughtful, and always gives an interesting glimpse of politics, not just in Chile, but in Latin America, from the perspective of somebody who had to leave their country of birth. So that is My Imaginary Country. It's made its rounds at some select theaters. Hopefully we'll get a wider release next year. On a different vein, I want to talk about Nanny, a film from the Midnight Madness program that I really, really liked as well. It is about a black woman who is in the U.S. She's come from Africa, and she's trying to make life for herself so she can bring her son to live with her. And in this ironic situation where she is caring for another family's child. So that is Nanny. Hopefully we'll get a release of that film too, sometime in the next few months or next year. I also want to give a shout out to The Eternal Daughter. I am a fan of Tilda Swinton. She plays a dual role in this film. I will not recommend this film to everybody per se because it is a bit of a slow burn, or it maybe feels like it drags a bit, but it really is about a relationship between a mother and daughter towards the mom's sort of later years in life. It's very interesting, and like I said, Tilda Swinton does not disappoint in this film. So that is The Eternal Daughter. Also, I want to mention Theater of Thought is a documentary by Werner Herzog. I know some of my friends will say, well, you are a Herzog fangirl, so you will mention that film. And yes, that might be true, but in this film, he talks about one of my favorite science topics, which is neuroscience, and different sort of questions that the current research is bringing up in the field of neuroscience, which is about looking at the brain and how it is a marvel to study, but not just the human brain, but looking at brains in terms of smaller animals and even artificial intelligence. So that is Theater of Thought, a film that will definitely please not just Herzog's fans, but science and sort of anyone else who's interested in the realm of neuroscience. So I leave you with these thoughts. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you have a list of films maybe to look out for in the next few months if they're not screening near you already. And in terms of other films that I watched at TIFF, there were so many that, like I said, 27. I think I only touched upon maybe 15. But the other ones were all interesting in their own right. Some of them maybe not so much of personal favorites, but definitely a good run at this year's TIFF. I'm looking forward to next year already. But in the meantime, I'm preparing for a couple more festivals in the city of Toronto, including the Shorts Not Pants and the Blood in the Snow film festivals that is happening late November 2022. So if you're in Toronto, please show up and support these festivals. They're very dear to my heart. If you're from abroad, look out for more updates at hyemusings.ca at this channel, and follow me on my socials at hyemusings. That's at HYEMUSINGS. Thank you again, and see you at the cinema.